Home Alone is not only one of the most iconic Christmas movies ever, but it's really one of the most iconic movies, period. For starters, the premise is lightning in a bottle, perfectly tapping into every kid's wildest dreams and darkest fears at the same time. It's also got all the classic Christmas elements on top, like snow-filled parks and part-time Santas. But what truly makes Home Alone the timeless masterpiece it is without a doubt the action. Today, I want to go over all the strategic ways that Kevin outsmarted the burglars, and hopefully learn how to write action just like it. In fact, to prove that you might learn something, before we begin, I want you to try and think of a trap you'd have Kevin set if you were a writer for Home Alone. You can pause the video if you want, or ignore this entirely and just keep watching, but later we'll revisit this question and test how much easier it is for you by the end of the video. This chart here is my fight spectrum. It hasn't seen much action in my recent videos, but since it's Christmas time, I figured, what the hell, let's dust this bad boy off. But first, speaking of Christmas, isn't there a gift you should have gotten by now? I mean, forgetting an 8-year-old kid at home is one thing, but forgetting to buy a Christmas gift? Now that's just cold. Luckily, I've got you covered with today's sponsor, Displate. Displate is the home of premium metal posters for any taste or style. Since you're watching this video, it's safe to say you've got really good taste. But with Displate, you can finally show it off in any way you want. From a subtle matte finish, a reflective gloss finish, or their signature texture finish that literally pops the art from the page, Displates reimagine what quality can look like in posters. They can also be hung up anywhere you want with no effort needed, thanks to their tool-free magnet mounting system. With over 2 million designs across over 200 licensed brands, Displate is the ultimate gift-giving hack for everyone on your holiday list. Star Wars brother? Easy. K-pop sister? No-brainer. Pixar parents? Done. But don't forget to treat yourself too. I just ordered this Spider-Verse one because, well, just look at it. Go check out the brand shop now and find that foolproof gift. Plus, if you order now using the link in the description, this QR code or code SQUAMP, you can get up to 40% off your order. Thanks again to Displate for sponsoring this video. The fight spectrum is a way to elevate a fight scene, or really any scene with conflict between two parties. The reason I made it in the first place is because I felt that way too often, action scenes would just devolve into chaotic messes that lose believability and lose purpose. Home Alone, however, nails its action sequences, and with the fight spectrum, we can hopefully see why. To use the fight spectrum, we first compare the relative strengths of the winner and the loser. This will tell you what category the fight falls into. Home Alone falls into the David vs. Goliath category. This is because the losers, Harry and Marv, are grown men, and much stronger than the winner, Kevin McAllister, who's an 8-year-old boy. Stronger is a loose term, but what I'm basically saying is that Kevin should theoretically lose every single time. Each category has corresponding requirements to ensure that the fight is, well, good. For any David vs. Goliath fight to pass my requirements, the winner has to defeat his opponents using strategy. This means tactics, plans, and clever, thought-out win conditions. This is what makes an unlikely victory feel that much more earned. The last time I did an analysis like this was for Breaking Bad, and the burglars in Home Alone don't really hold a candle to the cartel. With that being said, I firmly believe that the action in Home Alone works so well because it's rooted in satisfying logic. Do we care if Home Alone is believable? Not really, but the alternative to writing strategy would be Kevin just beating the crap out of the burglars with his bare hands, I guess, which I don't think is quite as satisfying and wouldn't be quite as iconic either. So without further ado, let's break down exactly how Kevin took down the burglars. At first, the burglars thought it was open season on the McAllister house, knowing that only Kevin stood in their way. So to get them off his tail, Kevin's first tactic was to flip his perception upside down. By puppeteering some mannequins and some posters he had around his house, Kevin turned a robber's delight into a no-fly zone. He gave off the illusion of a packed house, which was enough to steer off Harry and Marv for the night. In short, Kevin's subterfuge deceived them, which brings us to an important part of this analysis, my 5 S's of strategy. If I'm going to sit here and demand writers implement strategy, it's only fair that I also come up with a guideline for what I think fits the bill. This is why I've found 5 different broad tactics that an underdog can use to even the odds in a fight. The bluff that Kevin pulls off here is what I originally would call a sneak attack. This is because it relies on deception. However, commenters have brought to my attention a much better S word, subterfuge. From here on, I'm going to use sneak attack and subterfuge interchangeably, but just know that the core principle is that they'll use deception and trickery to lower the opponent's guards, or in the case of this bluff, raise their guards to scare them off. Sneak attack will have some role in just about every encounter moving forward, which goes to show just how reliable they are in a David vs. Goliath. In fact, the very next time the burglars try Kevin, he again relies on deception to ward them off. When Marv approaches the back door, Kevin's next trick has a little more firepower than a fake party. After already testing it out on the pizza delivery boy, Kevin's realized that he can play moments from a gangster movie to sound like an actual mob boss is living in his house. Also, sorry to spoil the fun, but apparently this movie is actually not real. The writers created it specifically with Kevin in mind. Anyway, Kevin pairs the movie audio with some firecrackers he found in his brother's room to really sell the sound of gunshots, which sends Marv running for his life. Once again, Kevin used subterfuge to deceive his opponent and buy himself more time. Would this work on a competent burglar? No, probably not, but I don't think that really takes away from the moment. I'm gonna sound like a broken record by the end of the video, but it's the creativity and the cleverness that makes Home Alone so iconic. After multiple failed attempts, the burglars are finally ready for the ultimate heist. But little did they know, Kevin was ready too. As a rule of thumb, for any David vs. Goliath fight, always try to give the David some time to prep. This way, you can plant some metaphorical seeds for future payoffs. Also, this montage of Kevin setting up the house just makes the final showdown that much more hype. Finally, the clock strikes 9 and it's time for the strategies to pay off. As far as Marv and Harry are aware, Kevin is still a dumb, helpless kid. They never learned that those two deterrents from earlier were actually both his doing. That's why when they waltz up to the back door with their guards down, they're perfectly susceptible to yet another sneak attack. But sneak attack won't be the only strategy used here. Through the doggy door, Kevin hits Harry with an airsoft gun, right smack in the weak spot. When you rearrange the words a little, this is the second of the 5 S's. Like the name suggests, the spot of weakness, or soft spot, or Achilles heel, or whatever you want to call it, is an area of the Goliath that is particularly sensitive. Targeting the weak spot is often what a David's sole win condition revolves around. But for Kevin, this was just the opening play. Realizing that they might have underestimated him, the burglars decide to split up. But unfortunately for them, that's exactly what Kevin was hoping they would do. Since Kevin hosed down each set of stairs, Harry and Marv both walked right into his next trap. Because it caught them each off guard, I would definitely consider this a sneak attack, but there's another 5S going on too, and that is surroundings. Surroundings as a strategy means using the quirks of the environment to your advantage. One of the biggest quirks of this Christmas environment is of course the cold winter air. Naturally, this freezes the water, creating a super discreet ice trap hidden in plain sight that I honestly think a lot of us would fall for. Literally. For the next several traps, aka like 90% of the entire plan, we're going to see more variants of sneak attacks paired with the surroundings that Kevin had set up prior, showing the efficacy of these two strategies used in tandem. For example, when Harry reaches for the doorknob, he's actually reaching for piping hot metal. When Marv walks up the tar-filled stairs, he unexpectedly steps on a nail. And when Harry tries the back door, he triggers a whole ass blowtorch. Through these examples, it's easy to say that the burglars are just idiots who don't learn, but in isolation, each of these traps has something really clever in common, and that again ties back to the surroundings. To get inside the house, the burglars only have 3 entrances: the front door, the back door, and the basement door. Meaning, when you narrow down the environment like this, devising a strategy suddenly becomes a lot more feasible. In fact, Kevin breaks it down to a science. I'm not sure why, but this next trap is the one that I've remembered most starkly throughout the years. In a carefully calculated bait, Kevin leaves a window open to lure the burglars inside. Being the expert burglar he is, Marv sees the golden opportunity to enter the house, where of course he's met with sharp Christmas ornaments to his bare feet. Now, this is by no means the finishing blow, but it's an important part of Kevin's plan that also brings us to the next S, sacrifice. A sacrifice is a calculated and intentional trade-off to help give the David an edge. In the case of Kevin here, he intentionally let the burglars into his home, sacrificing his security as a part of a bigger plan that we'll soon see. At this point, the burglars are fuming with rage. I didn't mention it, but Harry just got tarred and feathered by some other trap, like he was a 1700s tax collector. Realistically, traps like that were purely for the audience's entertainment. But if we want to get really technical, we can say that with each taunt, Kevin was targeting their weak spot and their prides as a means to help lower their guards. And it worked. After getting directly called out, the two ran headfirst up the stairs and into the paint buckets that Kevin had waiting for them, and then ran right into another tripwire. Look, I already told you guys these were no cartel members, okay? Next, once Kevin is moved to the treehouse, he's so deep in the heads of the burglars that they're convinced the only way to get to him is through the zipline. This use of surroundings casts a giant weak spot on the two of them called gravity. Kevin seizes the opportunity and snips the rope, sending them right into the wall. At this point, we enter the final leg of the fight, where Kevin starts to approach his win condition. Earlier, we saw him call the cops about a burglary in his neighbor's house. Now we see him making a break for it right to that same house. The burglars see this too, but think they can outsmart him. This is where he executes the final tactic in his strategy: In a sacrifice, he gives himself up to the burglars. Or maybe they honestly just catch him, but I see it as a part of his plan. Anyway, with their guards down, this opens the door for one last sneak attack, as well as the fifth and final S of strategy, synergy. In its simplest form, synergy is teamwork. If we were talking about something other than a kid's movie, I might say that synergy is actually using each other's strengths to cover each other's weaknesses, but in the context of Home Alone, when Kevin's neighbor Marley comes in with a shovel to the back of the burglars' heads, that's enough in my book to tally off that final S of strategy. With the burglars now unconscious and the cops on their way to the house, the win condition is achieved and the David has defeated the Goliath, all thanks to strategy. But even though Home Alone adhere to all of my made-up rules, I want to clarify that I didn't make the 5 S's of strategy to be used as a retroactive checklist to critique kids' movies. Instead, I think it works best as a tool for writers to use to construct things, not deconstruct things, meaning it's time for us to put the S's to use ourselves. It's a bit counterintuitive, but one of the best ways to foster creativity is to actually set limitations. For example, remember at the start of the video when I asked you to think of potential trap ideas? Well, hopefully that was pretty difficult. Sometimes there's so much to think about that you can get stunted with indecision. However, now that you know the 5 S's and have seen them in action, we've essentially set up limitations for ourselves, making this challenge much easier. For example, we know the surroundings is a nice suburban house. That prompts me to think about all of the unique rooms, like say the bathroom. Now if I pair that with a sneak attack, it makes me wonder how I could use a bathroom to create deception or camouflage, which makes me think of the steam that comes from a shower and how that could be used as a smokescreen, creating a weak spot in the burglar's vision. Maybe throw in a mannequin in the shower to cast a silhouette, and bam, you've got a rough idea for a Home Alone trap. Imagine Marv being baited into the bathroom, but when he opens the door, he's engulfed in a steamy haze, and then he's completely caught off guard by the silhouette of a woman in the shower that he runs out apologizing, only to trip and fall on carefully laid out toilet paper. Is that the greatest idea? Maybe, maybe not. But it took me all of 30 seconds to think of, which hopefully shows how effective the 5 S's can be for generating ideas. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, thanks to Displate for sponsoring this video, and happy holidays. Peace.